Hey everyone, welcome to Cowtown Rounds. My name is Andrew Shedd, and I'm the Residency Program Director here at Baylor All Saints Medical Center in Fort Worth, Texas. We welcome you to our brand new YouTube channel where we will focus on all things emergency medicine. We're going to talk about interesting cases. We're going to talk about how we can take better care of our patients. We're going to talk about medical education, all things related to the specialty that we love. So welcome to our channel. Please subscribe. We would also love if you follow us on our Instagram account at BASEM Fort Worth. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to some more of our team. Welcome to Cowtown Rounds.
Here we are.
I think we're good.
All right, let's do it.
So that'll all be on the outtakes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. So who's done this before?
Never.
Never.
Not once.
Excellent.
Never.
So this is our first go at a podcast. As y'all know, the background of this is we are a young residency program, and we are committed to advancing the future of our specialty. We love emergency medicine, and so we wanted to do a podcast where we could talk about all things EM. And the cool thing is at this table, we actually have a lot of, I hate to use the word generations because that makes me feel old, but we have different phases of careers.
There we go.
How about that?
There we go.
And so what a great opportunity to get together, to get to know each other better as a team, to advance our specialty, to talk about the specialty that we love. And so this podcast is called Cowtown Rounds. As you may or may not know, we're here in Fort Worth. And so this is a podcast for the Baylor All Saints Emergency Medicine Residency Program and faculty. And we have a great couple of episodes today. We're going to kick off this podcast with introducing ourselves and talking about some of our histories, both as learners and as educators. And then really looking forward to kicking off a series on medical education with Vivek. And but we have to give a cursory, what shall we say? Disclaimer. Mm-hmm. And ChatGPT told me that I had to give this disclaimer. When you say, how do you do a podcast? This is one of the first things it says. So we're not giving medical advice. This is for educational purposes. And our opinions are, that's really what they are. They're opinions based on our history as practitioners, as physicians, as individuals. Though we are at the Baylor All Saints Residency Program, we're not officially representing their opinions. These are really our own, and this is for educational purposes only. And I'm looking forward to get to know y'all. We were just talking about Chinmay. You and I have worked together for almost 6 years now.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, right?
Yep. Vivek, Monique, how many years have y'all?
We've known each other 4 years now.
4 years.
Time flies. Yeah.
Yep.
So why don't we start by introducing ourselves and we'll kick this off.
Yeah,
Chinmay?
sounds great. So my name is Chinmay Patel. I had the distinct pleasure of being the Associate Program Director at our residency here today. I've been in medical education for about 9 years. My plan was always to go into medicine. I found my path to emergency medicine early in medical school. I matched into a residency and got the opportunity to be chief resident, which really kind of opened my eyes to academics. I got to stay at my original program and help start an EM clerkship there, and really found a passion for undergraduate medical education. When we started the residency here in Fort Worth, I got an opportunity to interview. Was really excited to kind of be part of a new team, kind of build something from the ground up. Was really excited for what our opportunities were here. So been here in the Metroplex now for about 5 years now. Kind of been putting a lot of my heart and energy into building the residency program here. The areas of education I'm really focused in on. I really like curricula. I like undergraduate medical education, and I'm really getting into like early faculty development. Now those are some areas that are really calling to me right now.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent. Monique?
So I'm Monique Graff. I am from the Dallas area and went up to the Midwest for medical school. Quite a shock with the cold weather, but had a great time there. Was very interested in emergency medicine early on. I did have some background in teaching 4th grade and middle school science before going to medical school, so I knew that education was definitely going to be in my future one way or another. I was able to come back to the Dallas area for my residency, and after completing my residency, I did a 1-year medical education fellowship. Quite enjoyed that. My current focus is with undergraduate medical education, and now that I'm a faculty member attending here at Baylor All Saints, the upcoming year I will be the medical student clerkship director. I'm very excited about that.
Congratulations.
Monique. Yes. Excellent. Vivek?
I'm Vivek Medapalli. I'm originally from California. Switched coasts, went over to Florida for medical school, and then found myself in the Metroplex for residency. Like Monique, we both did fellowship together. And I always found myself in education, really, no matter what I did. I found myself teaching it, whether it was being a basketball coach or a little taekwondo instructor or teaching people how to cook. Little things, but I found myself gravitating towards that wherever I went. But excited to be here.
Yeah. And I'm Andrew Shedd, and my background was a little bit interesting. One thing y'all may or may not know, but I tell this to applicants, is I went to 2 residency programs. I went to Advocate Christ Medical Center in Chicago for 2 years, and then transferred to Parkland for a family situation. And I think one of the things that was really impactful to me early on was how supportive both of those programs were. And then my entry into medical education was through an ultrasound fellowship, and I ran the ultrasound program at John Peter Smith Hospital down the road for a few years before coming here to work with the team here to get this program running. So that's kind of my background. I think the one thing that's always impressed me, so I trained from 2008 to 2012, including my fellowship. You have to always be a lifelong learner.
Absolutely.
Medicine is always changing, always evolving. Back when I was training, which doesn't feel like that long ago, but we were just talking about lactates and sepsis. And early goal-directed therapy was like new, and we were questioning x-rays versus CTs for C-spine evaluation. And so just watching healthcare, medical education evolve has just been fascinating, and it's great to be a part of that, and it's great to be here with y'all. So have a couple questions for y'all that I thought would be a great way to introduce ourselves to the internets. Tell me a story or a time that you were most impacted by an educator. An attending, a senior resident, somebody that taught you something that you've carried with you into your careers to this point.
Yeah, I guess I can go first on this one. Going with the lifelong learner theme that you mentioned, Drew. So my attending intern year, we had a critical patient that came in. No one really knew what was going on. It was hectic. It was kind of a mess. We had several things going on with the airway. We were having difficulty getting access. Everything was going on, and we were scared, honestly. My attending looked to me and said, "What do you want to do first?" I confidently said, "I don't know." And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, realistically, what would you do here?" And he said, "I want to teach you something today, and that is a little lesson in humility, because I don't know either." And it's important for us to know that we don't know this stuff together, so that we can go back to our basics, assess what we've got, and work through this patient systematically. And it's important to keep our ancillary staff on board with that too. That kept me going as time went on too, to say, hey, if I don't know something, that's always something to learn from that case and continue forward. That's something I always stress on some of my learners too, is keep track of what you have. If you don't know it, admit it and say, you know what, I don't know it now, but I will know it later. Yeah. And I think that's stuck with me for now, and it's kept me a lifelong learner.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, and I think that instills kind of respect in your learners as well, because you're not lying to them, you're not trying to make things up, you're being honest with them. So I think your learners respect you more for that as well.
For sure.
Also, I'm honest. There are things that I'm still working on.
Yeah.
So
I feel like humility is such an important characteristic of an educator. I think being humble it leads me to want to be a lifelong learner. I know that I don't know. Mm-hmm. It also keeps me wanting to learn how to teach better too. And so I think I love that answer. Just humility is such the best educators I've worked with have always been humble people.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Definitely.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I can go next.
Yeah, go for it.
So the story that comes to my mind, the case that comes to my mind, was very impactful in learning about patience with learners. I was a very early intern, had a very long night shift with an attending, And it was really towards the end of our shift, the early morning hours. We're tired, wanting to go home, and it just so happens we had a very critically ill patient, altered mental status, fever, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. And we knew that this was leading to, once we stabilized the patient with intubation and such, this was leading to needing a lumbar puncture. Yeah. And I was a very early on intern. I had not had much experience with that at all. And it was my turn to go and give it a try. And I gave it all I had and worked really hard. And I could not get this lumbar puncture. I mean, attempt after attempt, I could not get it. And my confidence was just plummeting. And the entire time, my attending is just sitting there unfazed and unbothered and not frustrated, not upset. I knew he was tired. He had been up all night as well. And I remember looking at him and saying, I think it might be best if you just get it and then we can be done. And he said, we're not doing that. I'm going to be in here with you. I don't care. We're going to get this. You're going to get this. I believe in you and I know you can do this. Yeah. And just take a moment, focus on what you're doing, focus on your landmarks and try again. And then that next time I got it.
Great.
And the fact that he had so much patience with me and was so dedicated to me learning from this procedure really meant a lot.
And I bet you're a lot more confident.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the two things stand out to me. One is on the night shift. And we all know that night shifts, you're not always at your best.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to be tempted to take shortcuts or defer to a consultant. And it sounds like both you and your attending really kind of had the right mindset.
Yeah, you raise a good point, too. I mean, persistence is kind of the key to education a lot of times, is when you feel like you're about to give up, that's usually the moment where you get the thing that you've been going for.
Yeah.
So congratulations, first off. And that's a big point.
Yeah.
I love that.
So for me, a time where an educator was really impactful in my training and my career trajectory was actually very early on in my intern year. July, early August, I was working with our program director in the ED, and it was one of those like classic late Monday, the wheels have fallen off the rail car. We're all just trying to hold on tight and keep on, and I just felt completely overwhelmed, like completely out of my water, and was like, what am I doing? Like, why did I pick emergency medicine? Like, this was not the right specialty for me. And I think he was like, hey, how are you doing, Chim? And I was like, I don't know. I think I can't do this. I just can't. I think I need to quit. And he's like, whoa, settle down. We'll get through this. He kind of helped me slow down, take a deep breath, and go piece by piece. And I think we forget often how vulnerable we are as learners, and kind of that transition. The 3 hardest years in your life are the first year of medical school, the first year of residency, and first year as an attending, right? And so in being mindful of, I'm always appreciative of my program director, and he was always has been and will be a mentor to me in terms of how he approached his role in education. He was one of those people that just inspired confidence, and especially early on in intern year when I didn't have confidence, he lent me some of his and really got me through that shift and through the year. I was chief. I found my way to academics, so just always appreciative of what he did for me at that time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Mentors are so important, and I think that really is a great example of how, why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And how we can shape not just the patients we see, but the patients that are seen by the folks that we work with and teach. So, great example. All right, so mine is just going to be a quick anecdote. I love trying to just share with residents how one single case can impact your practice for many, many years. There are many things that I bet we all could list off that we do because of either one teaching point or one person that taught us something. But so my example is this. When I was an intern, circa 2008, I had an anesthesiologist that said, let's intubate this patient a different way today. And he handed me an endotracheal tube without a stylet, which at the time seemed unnecessary, but his point was just try something different.
Sure.
Here's an ET tube without a stylet, just see what it feels like. And I remember thinking to myself, why? What is the purpose of this? So fast forward literally 10 years later, I'm moonlighting in an emergency department that I rarely worked at. I didn't know the staff, didn't know the system, and we had to intubate a critically ill patient. And as I was doing direct laryngoscopy, and as I have the view of the glottis, I kind of stick my hand out for an endotracheal tube, and the RT handed me one for some reason without a stylet in it.
Wow.
And normally one might have either panicked
Yeah.
or just given up on the view or kind of paused to get the equipment set up. And I just remember thinking, oh, I've done this before, and took the tube and just passed it in. It wasn't a big deal. And so like the case was fine, but it was just it was such a stark reminder to me of how one little thing, even 10 years later,
Yeah.
can stand out to you and can like just make a difference. And so I think every time we just take that opportunity to teach just a tiny little thing, we have no idea, the impact it could have for years to come. So
Well, that's fantastic.
That's awesome.
And thinking back on that now as an attending, you kind of appreciate that faculty member did something that's probably not their standard practice either, and then realize that, hey, this is something they need to practice in. At my home institution, we had an attending who realized that we never intubated with Millers because everyone did Max, and he kind of made it his mission. If you're intubating with me, you're using a Miller, and it wasn't his piece of equipment that he preferred, but he realized that that's just something that people weren't working on. To your point, being an emergency medicine physician means I don't get to supply what my equipment list is in advance to the OR to ask for my equipment there, or I'm not stocking my own clinic with what I use. I kind of have to just be able to be adaptable, and so using that opportunity as an educator to kind of really making sure we're thinking through how does what I do affect their education is so helpful.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think our specialty depends on adaptability. We're the people that have to focus on the task depending on whatever situation we have. One of my favorite mentors always told me that if you are adaptable in these cases, you'll always succeed. And when you are most uncomfortable, that's when you're most going to learn. You're not going to learn if you're not comfortable, or if you are comfortable. So,
Yeah, that's the great thing about residency. You get to work with all these different attendings with all these different practices, and you get to, pick up different things, and you're not just learning from one person and one experience, you're learning from many people, and I think that's one of the best things about residency.
Absolutely.
excellent. Well, shall we move on to question 2?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. What is a time that you have taught something to a learner and then it's come back in a way that's either been memorable or changed an outcome or they've expressed appreciation? What's your most memorable teaching moment?
Oh boy! Intern year. I was a senior resident at this point, and the intern on the shift with me for a critical care shift was now one of my best friends. Was working with me on an airway, and we had this. We learned about some supraglottic stenosis. It was a little scary up front. So I said, you know what? Get your bougie out and just see if you need to use it. And he's like, no, I'm going to try and look at it with the normal geometry and go from there. I think I can get it. I said, just take it out and see what you can do. So I taught him to do that. I said, use the bougie on this one just in case you'll have to use it next time. And he does it. He does it fine. And he calls me about, honestly, 2 months ago where he had a case very similar to this, and he's now a first-year attending in an academic setting where he's also working with residents. And he had to run the exact same scenario where he said, hey, take out a bougie because I'm scared. And then he calls me and he goes, honestly, what you taught me was instrumental because teaching someone how to do this is completely different than doing it yourself. You have a confidence in doing it yourself that may be harder when you're the one standing aside. So the full circle moment was amazing for me. And I love seeing a full circle moment in a learner where it clicks for them and they're able to pass it on to someone else. That's one of my favorite things in education.
Yeah.
Yeah, my program director in Chicago would say that he didn't let residents get into situations that he knew he couldn't get them out of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I always remember that. I was like, that's a really good point. Like, just kind of know those boundaries. So,
Yeah.
very cool.
I love
To your
that.
point, like teaching something and then hearing a resident teach something, or like, oh, this is how Dr. Patel does it. Like, it's kind of like
nice.
a different experience, right? It kind of just hits you a different way. I think it's easy for us to, on clinical shifts in the ED, like just kind of like get into the mundane day-to-day experience of something, and we don't realize how special some of these moments are. And I think that's what keeps me in academics, is it kind of keeps the ER is always fresh through my learner's eyes. Like to that point, the most impactful teaching event I've had recently is actually one that's completely not memorable. I was down at one of our national conferences a year ago, and out of nowhere I heard someone say, Dr. Patel, Dr. Patel. And they came up and ran up to me, and truthfully did not remember this person. I was like, oh, hey, he's like, there's like, and then the student was the senior resident, actually. It was very sweet. She was like, you may not remember me, but I was actually a third-year medical student rotating with you in the ED on like my core rotation, and you let me intubate a patient, and it was so cool, and like, it really got me to emergency medicine. She ended up matching to the residency program that I was faculty at. She became a chief resident there. It was just kind of a cool experience. And I was like, like most of us, depending on the day, like we have an intubation, it's the end of the day, we go home. I mean, you might have forgotten about the intubation before you get home, just it becomes a more routine procedure, but it's not routine for our learners. I think that's what kind of makes it special for me being a teacher.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
that's a very cool story. It's so cool that you had no idea, again, how much that one little scenario, how impactful it was. So cool.
Yeah, yeah. My particular instance, it was kind of, I got to be on the opposite end of having the confidence in the patients with a learner that I was working with, and it was my first critical care attending shift, so I knew it was going to be wild, because that's just how it goes. It's your first one as an attending, and so we had a very difficult trauma airway that we had to intubate, and I was working with a senior resident, and had known this senior resident when they were an intern and I was still in residency, so it was a unique experience to work together in a bit of a different dynamic, but it was a very unstable patient, and we had talked about if we had a trauma airway, what our plan A was going to be, our plan B, our plan C, how we were going to do this, and we went in and it seemed like everything was just chaos because this patient was very unstable. We had we just had to go for it and get the airway. And I remember holding C-spine, just kind of crouching down, trying to see the glide scope, and the resident looking at me saying, "This may not go well. I'm not so sure." And I just looked at that resident and I said, "I know you can do this. We have our plan A, our plan B, our plan C. We have to move now. Just go for it. I'm right here." And that resident got the airway. It was beautiful. Everything went well. And I remember walking out of there and that person looking at me, kind of one of those instances saying, I was scared. Yeah. And I said, so was I. They said, I couldn't tell that you were scared. And I mean, I was scared, but, I didn't do much in that scenario. That resident did the airway. They did the hard part. I just said that I believed in them and knew that they could do it, and just to stick to our plan. And sometimes that's all it takes to give that person the confidence to be successful.
I wonder if you thought back to that LP you did as an intern and then just kind of applied some of that confidence.
Certainly afterwards. I think in the moment my brain was going a million miles an hour, but definitely afterwards. You're getting this. You can do it. And they did, and it was a really cool experience to be on the other end.
That's awesome.
Good. Oh, am I up?
You're up.
All right. So my entry into academics was ultrasound, and so when you're an ultrasound director, ultrasound educator, you give the same material many times. Every ultrasound rotation, you're doing the same kind of didactics, and so they kind of become a little bit monotonous, where you don't know the impact that they might have. And so one of the things we teach a lot of is how to but how to assess for the possibility of a pulmonary embolus with a cardiac ultrasound by looking for right heart strain. And so we do that on every ultrasound rotation with every medical student or intern or resident. And so I had done that on a standard ultrasound rotation at JPS. And fast forward a year or two, I had a resident who was in their second or third year tell me how they had diagnosed a submassive or massive pulmonary embolus in the OR, that they were, I think they were in an ICU rotation. They were called to the OR as part of maybe a code team or maybe the PACU, I'm not sure. But they basically diagnosed the most likely condition of a PE with ultrasound, ended up giving the patient thrombolytics, and they survived, all based off of that ultrasound finding. And it was one of the first times that I'd had that scenario where I had such short-term feedback of a learning point like that. And so that was definitely extremely impactful early on. The other thing I think about is, a lot of times what we give as teaching points is super important, but how much more important is it the example we set in the things we don't do? Yeah. Because in emergency medicine, there's a lot of temptations to, just have certain thoughts or attitudes about certain scenarios.
Yeah.
And I think the better example we can set by being above reproach in those scenarios is just as impactful to our learners as the things we teach them. And so, yeah, I think what we do, who was the Mel Herbert? He used to
Oh,
say,
yeah.
what did he used to say?
What we do matters.
What we do matters.
What we do matters. So thank you all for being here. This, again, is our introductory episode to Cowtown Rounds, and looking forward to many more. Vivek, do you want to give us a brief heads up about what we're going to be doing for your first Med Ed episode?
Yeah, of course. So I think all of us have learners of varying degrees on every shift, really. And we try to come up with different approaches to address each learner. And I want to give you all a few different ways or frameworks that you can use to focus on each learner. Whether it's finding a differential diagnosis, whether it's giving feedback, whether it's correcting an error, whatever that ends up being. And hopefully it's important and useful and something that you can take with you.
Yeah.
Love that.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Love that. So on our next episode, we'll kick off our medical education series with teaching at the bedside, and look forward to seeing you all again next week.
Sounds
Great.
great.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, y'all.
Later.